So we'll move on to question and answer session now for a few minutes. And I'll start with one of my own before we take questions from the audience. So a variety of states have a variety of different standards for PFAS, both in what PFAS they regulate and at what level they regulate those. And that landscape seems to be changing all the time. How does that uncertainty play into both treatment options that you have and disposal options that you might have, depending on where you are in the U.S.? And then as a follow-up to that, how are you dealing with places that don't have any PFAS regulations? And what are you guys seeing happen there? And do you find the owners are thinking forward and trying to deal with what may be coming, or are most of them just dealing with what's in place right now and taking their chances on the future?
That worked? You did it before. We've got some people that are thinking ahead, but in a lot of cases, already in process designs have come to a grinding halt. Some of our main clients do not want to put something in, it was at 90% design, it's going to be a $2 million install, and then a year from now, or they're going to install it and regulations are going to come in and it's not going to be worth anything. So, because in a lot of those cases, it is not PFAS driven. So if it's not PFAS driven, hopefully, and in a lot of cases we've been able to, kind of put it on hold, start looking at the options, and kind of retool. But we've been lucky enough on two of our major ones to be able to pause, because in a lot of cases, you can't. If that other driver, and I have not worked with one where we haven't been able to pause right now. Where there haven't been regulatory numbers, we've been kind of just, the IHRC actually has a great table that had, and they've got it in Excel so they can keep updating, which I thought was a very interesting idea when they came up with fact sheets. Because once you publish something, it's obsolete. So they've updated it 1 or 2 times. And it really is a cross-section of what the contaminants are. So I know for one of our sites, even though we don't have regulations in Michigan for a couple other contaminants, because there are the hot button contaminants for the other states, those are ones we're looking at now, because that's going to be the next thing that comes through.
Brian, how about for the waste side? Are you guys being forced to look at anything else besides PFOS, PFOA in general?
No, the fact of the matter is it's non-regulated. So on the commercial side, the interest in our facilities are the secure placement in landfill and isolation from the leachate. And so we haven't even instituted any type of pre-approval flags for items that may contain it. Right now we're operating on a voluntary basis. Those people that have the problem know they have the problem. They're coming to us for help because municipal solid waste landfills are refusing to take it. On the flip side, municipalities that operate wastewater treatment facilities are coming to us because they know they're going to have water treatment media that's going to contain it. On our commercial side and or non-commercial side, the operations side, we're full steam ahead with regard to anytime we're discharging to the POTW, whether it's a treated leachate or whether it's from our commercial and non-hazardous wastewater treatment plants, we're instituting a final step for being able to polish that material out of that discharge. So that's already we're in budget season right now, which is a lot of fun. But we're already CapExing that for next year, and we're full steam ahead in building those out.
Adam, how about you? I assume from your presentation that this is kind of being customer-driven, that you guys are looking at more and more of the PFAS that could be removed by carbon.
Yeah, and more so than the customer, well, ultimately they are the customer, but community-driven, where some communities are quite vehemently opposed to anything being in the water, not completely understanding what detection limits and reporting limits mean, what those values really carry. They're just asking for 0. There are some sites that have been really proactive. The one that was mentioned this morning about the dairy farm that had the PFAS in the milk. That was Kennebunk, Maine. That site installed, they piloted GAC starting, oh geez, I guess maybe it might have been July of 2017. They wrapped up that pilot. And then small-scale pilots, we're talking 3-inch diameter columns. They moved to 12-foot diameter vessels, but are still calling it a pilot study, only operating that one impacted well during their high season, the tourist season. But their community really hasn't responded a lot, other than no news is good news. And with that, we're seeing that at other sites too. Stewart, Florida, that's actually going to be a resin application. We're supplying resins there. And I'm sorry I didn't mention that in my presentation. We have some of that data, but we're still kind of getting that sorted out. But that site is also doing a full-scale evaluation with not wanting to implement a design, not really knowing what the outcome is going to be, but at least wanting to have treated water and being ready in case there's a change. Other states like New Jersey, we have systems there other than the PFOA and PFOS, and they have the nonhas acid as one that they're trying to tackle, and that's quite specific to the industries that have used that compound, and those being in New Jersey.
Charlie?
So this starts out for US Ecology and then probably goes broader than that, but the AFFF firefighting foam, you solidify it. What do you solidify it with? How much does that increase the volume? And what's the bag made out of?
That's a good question. So the solidification process, we're using pozzolanic cement kiln stabilization, or CKD. It effectively about triples the volume of that concentrate, and so we, of course, have to take that into consideration for how much we're generating, how many bags we're gonna fill in that process, and how much space it's going to take up in the landfill. The PacTech designs the bags that we're using, and outside of the fact that the exterior layer is HDPE, I don't know that if they have proprietary information about the inside of the bag or not, but the bag I brought is a single zippered container. The full containment bags are double zippered and have a felt liner on the top to keep the bags from rupturing or anything, any of the debris or anything hitting the zipper and knocking it open, if you will, while you dump the bag out of the roll-off box.
Inside of the bag. The related question is there's proposed Michigan legislation to take back all the excess AFFF foam that we don't want used anymore. So what are other disposal options if a program like that were to be started besides the US Ecology approach?
Of the concentrate?
Yes.
Incineration?
Yeah, it would have to be a direct destructive technique. There would be no reason to move it to another media, only to have to then incinerate the rest of that. The one confounding issue to all of this is that, like for example, the electrode methods require very high potential to be able to operate, and it means that the electrodes have a very short life. So a lot of these technologies have a long way to go. The other issue with incineration is that when you incinerate these compounds, you produce a hydrofluoric acid gas in the kiln, which is extremely corrosive. It's one of the things that we consider in how the material is handled, the concentrations that will allow in the kilns. It's difficult. There are a lot of things that go into tackling it.
Is the ash a concern from incineration also?
The ash? The fluoride should accumulate in the scrubber water or complex with the kiln refractory, or some of it actually may remain as fluoride within the carbon itself or the other medium. The other thing I would mention about the resins is that where we've seen resin most effectively applied, and the resins that we'll supply, we're recommending that when those are spent, they're going back for incineration. And then of course, those waste-to-energy facilities have fluorine limits at the same token to control any corrosive effects on the refractory. So it's difficult. That's a great understatement.
When you talk about incineration, can we make sure that they really break down to a mineralization, or what about all these so-called precursors? Do we have also the effect that we basically create our PFAS or smaller, or PFAS better, smaller components? And because the other thing is, I'm not aware of any sampling and analysis method which is out there for polyfluorinated.
So I'll repeat the question. He was asking about whether during incineration we know that we're actually breaking down all of the PFAS, and then also with all the precursors, do we know that we're not actually creating some of the PFAS by the incineration process, and how do we sample that to be sure? Is there a process by which we can do that?
So sampling the airstream yeah, I have not done an air sample. We have a hard enough time doing some solid samples and getting a reasonable detection limit. You know, when we're looking at parts per trillion in water, but the solids are coming back in parts per billion, that's a big difference. You sound more familiar with the incineration, but the articles we read talk about destruction from an incineration side, and not oxidizing it and taking your precursors down to your people and your PFAS. So incineration seems like it's also kind of a more it's a go-to as well, right? It's been around for a long time. There's been studies done about how hot they need to do it, and I think there are some studies that are lower temperatures, but then they're doing a lot of before that goes full scale, they're doing a lot of testing. I'm not aware of how they do that testing.
Yeah, the only way to do it practically, or what we say with some surety, would be to do a fluoride mass balance, right? Because that's where it should all end up, assuming it's all completely destroyed. I can't imagine ever being able to complete that cycle, complete that loop, and make it back to 100%. What we're entering into with the EPA, totally forthcoming, we're going to study that at our facilities to get an idea, because they have other interested parties within the U.S. government that would like to know, is this effective and how effective? And that's where it has to start. But as far as trying to do a fluoride balance, there's going to be some portion that ends up in the scrubber water, again, some portion that ends up in the kiln itself, some portion that remains in the GAC, and then another portion that's going to escape as most likely a particulate. We know that there are activated carbon systems being applied for vapor phase treatment of the PFAS compounds. My presumption with those is honestly they're probably particulate filters, because none of this is actually occurring at a temperature high enough where they're going to be individual molecules. They're going to be particulate matter, which it would seem that any of the sites that have not combusted it completely, you've ended up with airborne particulates that then dissolve in rainwater because these compounds are quite soluble. So again, the fluoride balance would be the silver bullet. We're going to see what we can accomplish. And right now we're actually setting up the sampling protocol with the EPA to try to make some headway.
Brian, I have a follow-up question for you on the waste side of things. You talked about how you guys are handling PFAS waste. I wondered if you might be able to speak to more of the industry in general. It certainly seems like the landfill operators are becoming much more aware of PFAS and its implications, and are starting to be more concerned about potential PFAS wastes. And when do you think that people will be starting to refuse PFAS wastes? And is there anything that gives you guidance on that, or is it all landfill specific and how much risk they're willing to take, basically?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've seen it all over the map. On the commercial landfill side, the municipal solid waste landfills in the state of Michigan started rejecting it or not receiving it in early to mid 2017. And that's when it first stumbled across our desk as an opportunity. And this was kind of on the tail end of the municipal, or the wastewater treatment facilities not wanting it in any of the treated landfill leachate discharge. So from there's a couple of things to consider. I know wastewater treatment, commercial wastewater treaters that have been placed on notice don't want it. Municipal solid waste landfills in the state of Michigan have been saying no to it for quite some time. There's been some confusion as to whether some of the other landfills in the Midwest will take it. We've heard no's from a lot of the Ohio landfills as well. And then it's, to take it one step further, a lot of these landfills receive biosolids and treated solids from these POTWs and or from other treatment operations if you're rendering a treated residual non-hazardous, and whether or not there's then any of these PFAS constituents in that treated residual. So it's gotten a lot of attention. The other thing to note, when you talk to refineries, when you talk to airport industries, they mentioned the state of Michigan program for the municipal fire departments to be able to dispose of this stuff properly. They're already starting to look at, okay, it's not regulated now, but if it does become a TSCA-regulated substance, if it does become a RECRA-regulated substance with a LDR attached to it that is extremely small, are they going to go back and fine us or make us go get this material out of the landfills that we've already sent it to? So there's a lot of concern depending on the type of industry you're talking to, whether it's management of concentrated material or management of contaminated soil.
We just did a PCE cleanup, the dig and haul, defined boundaries. Waste approvals for the HAS and the non-HAS landfills were in and approved, and we knew we had PFAS in the water, in the area, and we were going to go below the water table with the excavation. And we went to the landfills, because there's nothing on any of the profiles, HAS or non-HAS landfills, that even ask. And you guys were like, no problem. Just, you need to tell us so we had to run soil data, which turnaround times are long for PFAS right now, so that delays everything. But the non-HAS landfills were very interesting, because EQ, or US Ecology, could tell us what concentration they could take it at, but then they explain this bag thing over the phone, and we're kind of like, it makes more sense when you see pictures. But the non-HAS landfills were all of a sudden, alarms went off kind of thing. And it was, we can't even tell you, we need the data, but we can't tell you what number we can accept it at. We just need to see the data first, and then we'll tell you. So it was until we got those numbers back, it was a little, okay, well, hopefully most of the stuff we're sending them is above the water table, and it ended up working out fine. But it was very interesting the different reactions we got, and understanding how you guys landfill it versus how they are going to landfill it. It makes sense, but that initial reaction on the phone was very alarming from getting some work done on our sites.
This is speculation, so take it like that, but when this issue crossed everybody's plate, the first thing all these landfill operators did was go get samples of their leachate, get pre-treatment and post-treatment as they're discharging, and analyze for the PFAS, PFOS, PFOA primarily, to see if they in fact had it. So the speculation part comes from if they know they have it at a certain concentration in their leachate, and they're looking at a site that has a concentration of less than that, they might be willing to play ball. Again, we're operating in an unregulated scenario right now, but that might weigh into their decision making.
Thank you, very interesting. One thing that's clear that this is not something we should have done years ago. If it was, it is what it is. But what are we going to do about it now? And I think in the room we have some of the subject matter experts on this topic. And after the lunch hour, I visited the aide in my representative's office in the state capitol. And I would encourage anybody, especially if your representative is in the majority because they control the agenda, there might be legislation on this in the lame duck session or certainly in 2019. Reach out to your elected officials and you can make an impact on what should be done, because I don't think we can sweep this under the rug. It is going to be a problem, and if we have best practices, we can help address those. So that's what I would encourage everybody in this room to do, is to reach out and open lines of communication with your elected officials so that we can have the best regulations that are reasonable and can get the job done, because it is a complicated problem. Thank you.